Hey guys, what's up? Chappie here. I'll tell you, I love it. It's Thursday night. I love doing this show. I've been feeling. I'll be totally honest with you. Been feeling a little bit under the weather. But my wife asked me before I go on the air tonight. She's like, "It's okay to be sick," and I'm like, "Forget that. I worked too hard just to be sick this late in the game." So I hope you guys enjoy the show. I got a lot to talk about, and this is my favorite time of the year, and it's my favorite time of the year mainly because I love to evaluate. I love to sit down and compare and try and strategize a system that you know can basically outthink your competition, and that's what drafting is all about. So tonight I'm going to give you a clear path to how to dominate your draft, and it starts tonight. This is the night to really kind of hone down on strategy, approach, knowing right from wrong, do from don't. There's some real strategy to take advantage of tonight. We're going to talk about it, okay? This is going to be part one of a two-part series. Next week, I'm going to give you my list from the middle infield position. But tonight, I'm strictly going to stick to, a holistic overview of what we're really looking at when we're trying to break down and prepare for our drafts. So what exactly am I talking about, right? I did this last week. I'll do it again tonight. What are some of the things that come in mind when you think about the middle infield position? What are some questions you have when you're asking yourself about your approach to this position? So the first thing that comes to mind with me and where this all starts from, as I said last time, you kind of have to look at your silos. First and third, you're going to be looking predominantly at power. You're going to be looking at RBIs, and you're hoping to get some average and runs there. And it makes sense too, right? Because if you think about the types of players that are playing at the corner, it's your bigger, stronger guys. It's your power hitters. It's your the guys that aren't necessarily the most speedy on the base. So it makes sense that those guys are your middle of the lineup type guys. In the middle, however, this is where so if you think about it in this perspective, you have two different spots. You have corner and you have middle and you have outfield. Home runs is pretty easy to get. RBIs is fairly easy to get. Runs gets a little tougher. And stolen base is a premium. So if you're looking at from a big picture, if you're looking at corner, middle, outfield, and no corners are going to steal any bases, aren't you putting an awful lot of pressure on your outfield and your draft strategy if you don't approach stolen bases in the middle infield? And yes, you can do it deep. That's not what this is about. The reason why you want to take a speed guy early on in your draft is because if you can get one of these guys that doesn't hurt you with your average or your home runs or your RBIs, say two of those three, you're doing a great service to yourself and setting your team up. You're starting right off the back with a leg up on your competition. If they're bringing in a 250 or 260 average and 10 homers, and you're bringing in a 320 homers, you're automatically putting yourself ahead of the competition. So, again, some of the things we're looking for at the middle infield position. Is it deep? Yes. Undoubtedly, yes, it's deep. But that's a little bit misleading because and we'll get to this, that top tier is so heavy, front end loaded that you really have to kind of jump on it. There's plenty of potholes at the middle infield position, and that's what I'm talking about. I guess here is you want to try your best to avoid those potholes wherever you can. So attacking this position early is going to be a way for you to take a little bit less risk out of it. There's three middle infield positions in essence. maybe that fourth guy's a bench guy. Obviously the fourth guy's a bench guy. You take a little bit later. I'm saying be ahead of the competition at the middle infield position. There's a ton of five-tool players in this category, in this silo. Tonight we're going to talk about some guys that might fit that you can get at a value. You really have to start thinking about, though, the kind of risk you want to take. And again, this is what the focus of tonight's show is going to be about. You're going to see that I'm going to spend a lot of time on these first five guys and talking about strategy and why it's important to properly evaluate these guys going into your draft. We're also going to talk about some prospects. Prospects are a big part of fantasy baseball. I know a lot of people shun prospects. I'm not one of those guys. There's a couple guys that really could benefit your team this season. Why not want to be in on those guys? Especially if you're in a league. Say you're in a small keeper league, right? Say you keep three guys. If you can get Wander Franco, it's going to be a big advantage for you in future years. So we'll talk about some prospects. Not too deep tonight. We'll get into those a little bit later on. But there's some strategy there. So let's talk about our five-tool players, our true five-tool players. And again, I told you I'm not going to break down and talk about my list tonight. I'm not going to talk about ADPs and all that stuff that I always talk about. I want to talk about actual players and putting a good wrap around what my thought process is going into the draft and why I think that way. So if you look at the shortstop position, we're talking about middle infield. I guess I should introduce myself. Chap's Fantasy Chat. Thursday nights at 8. Draft for Upside. You can find me on StreamYard. You can find me on Spotify. You can find me on iTunes. Chappie's Fantasy Sports Group. Chappie's Fantasy Chat, both on Facebook. And Chappie's Fantasy Chat on Twitter. So let's talk about these five guys that I have at the top of my tier at the middle infield. And let's talk about approach and why we want to go where we want to go. First guy off the board, according to Fantasy Pros average, chart that I often talk about. So ESPN, Yahoo, RT Sports, NFBC, averaged out together, gives you a pretty good, solid number. Again, it's important because a lot of the players that you're going to be drafting against is just going to go straight off of one of these lists. They're not going to do research. Use it to your advantage. That's the big takeaway here. Use these lists to your advantage. You don't have to go off them, but it's important to know, if I don't know, if Manny Machado is going off the board at the end of the second round and you value Rafael Devers more, you can justify taking Rafael Devers at the end of the second round because you have made your list. And you know the value of that second, third baseman, whatever, isn't the player. It's the pecking order in third base, at the third base category. That's my point. So we're going to do that at shortstop a little bit tonight. And I think it's fun because you're looking at a position, again, an infield position. Infields are, there's only 4 infield spots, 6 total if you do middle and corner. So you're talking about half your position in the infield. Again, you're putting a lot of stress on your outfield if you don't approach the right categories. So you look at the first round, and these are the guys we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Tatis. We're going to talk about Turner. We're going to talk about Story. And we're going to talk about a couple other guys. I'm not going to talk about Lindor. I'm not going to talk about a little bit about Bichette. But I do want to talk about this top tier. And just kind of hone down on approach here. Fernando Tatis currently is at ADP 3.2. I'll say that again. 3.2 for Fernando Tatis, 21 years old, just signed a $340 million contract. Now, I know he's saying all the right things. Fourth in ESPN, fourth in Yahoo, third in RT Sports, second in NFBC. Second. I'm not buying this here. I'm letting someone else take that. To me, Tatis isn't as valuable as Acuna. He isn't as valuable as Soto. He isn't as valuable as Trout. Why are you taking him there? It's the shiny new toy. And people are paying up for that name. I'm not doing it. He's a great player. But there's a few warning signs there for me. His average dropped 40 points last year. Granted, it was a shortened season. I'll give you that. But that doesn't mean we should just discard it. Pitchers are going to pitch him differently this year. Of this top group, this is the one I'm steering clear of. And it's not because I don't like Fernando Tatis. I do. Maybe in a dynasty scenario, he's worth that third pick overall. But I don't think he is. Even still. I still don't see him, but I'd say 8th or 9th. And again, it's not a slight on Tatis. He has prodigious power. He's got a ton of speed. He seems to hit for an eye average. But what if it drops another 40 points this year? For who? For Tatis? No, absolutely not, Rich. Absolutely not. I'm just saying the value isn't right. He's valued too high. He hasn't proven enough. How do you know Fernando Tatis is better than Bo Bichette? I value Bo Bichette higher than Fernando Tatis. You could get him 3 rounds later. That's the point. I think that it's a shiny new toy that everybody wants to play with. That's what I think is going on with Tatis. Do I think he's a first-round pick? Absolutely. Do I think he's the 3rd overall pick? Heck no. No, absolutely not. If I'm picking 8 or 9, and the big 3 short, I'm not even going to take him then because I'm going to take these next 2. I'm dying to talk about these next 2, Rich. Let's talk about Trey Turner first. ADP 8.6. Guys, if I'm drafting and I get that 7, 8, 9, I'm stoked because I know who I'm taking. I'm taking Trey Turner. So here's the thing about Turner. He's a 6-year vet already. I mean, it seems like just yesterday, I'd say I was on Trey Turner when he got drafted at NC State. I remember when he got traded from San Diego to Washington. I was a big fan of his then. So it's one of those things that I've kind of watched this kid grow up. I love Vlad. I talked about him last week, brother. And he's lost 42 pounds. This is the year. This is his 22 or 23 year season. This is the year Vlad has a huge year. But back to Trey Turner. This is a year I think Trey Turner has a huge year too. it's interesting because when you look back at these guys and what they've accomplished already, it's quite impressive. All three of these guys. Um, Again, he's Trey Turner, a career 296 hitter, 353 OBP. And I know when we start getting into these OBP, OPS, all that stuff, here's how I like to keep that in perspective. OBP, 353 last year would have put Trey Turner just outside of the top 10 in OBP. So that's his career on base percentage. All on base percentages is walks and hits versus at bats. That's all it is. I don't get into all that crazy stuff, but this is important for me because I want to know, especially a stolen base guy, you want to know he's getting on base because he gets on base, he has a chance to steal a base. His last 3 full seasons, Trey Turner's stolen 46, 43, and 35 bases. He swiped 12 last year, which if you think about it, puts him on pace for about 36. So you're talking about a 300 hitter. 35 seems to be the floor on his stolen bases. He's hit double-digit home runs every year since his rookie year. Why is Trey Turner going 5 picks lower than Tatis? Do you feel me? Am I right with what I'm saying here? Especially if you're looking at the profile of the category that you're looking at. We're talking about middle infielders, and we're talking about middle infielders, what you're looking at, your strengths, right? You want speed out of your middle infielders. This is your speed. In this top category, this is your speed. Again, career 353 OBP, career 296 batting average. He's averaging 50. He's averaging 51 stolen bases for every 162 games he plays. Now, that number's a touch skewed, right? Because that's assuming he plays every game of the year. Most players aren't doing that. Still, 51 stolen bases. I don't know of many people in the league that are going to do that this year. You can count them on one hand. And you don't need the whole hand. Trevor Story. 12.2 ADP. Here's the thing about Story. I've not always been a big Trevor Story fan. I was slow to catch on that. I'll be quick to pat myself on Bo Bichette. If you do that, you got to be critical of yourself when you miss. As early as last year, I was saying I'm not sold on Trevor Story. Story's consistency really has been impressive. I think he has a year this year. So, okay, let me back up a step. And this is how I come to this conclusion. Guys. So, trending, right? You got to show me you're going in the right direction, or you've kind of not plateaued out, but you're in your prime, if you will. If you look at what he's done the last 3 years, so go back to 2017. He's a 239 hitter. Sure, he had 24 homers. Stole only 7 bases. What kind of player is Trevor Story? That was second year in the league. So there was some skepticism there. Single barrel Hubers. Single barrel Hubers. It's my first one. Promise. The thing about Stories has been his consistency. So since that year, let me read you his stat lines. 2018 as a 25-year-old, 291, 37 homers, 27 stolen bases. 37-27. 108 RBIs and 88 runs. Take that, right? It's a first round pick, right? 291, 30, and 20. Yeah. 35-25 at that. The next year, 294. 35 homers and 23 stolen bases. Just 85 RBIs, but he had 111 runs. And then last year, the shortened year, he's hitting 289. 11 homers, projects out to around 30 something. I look at it as a third of the season last year, right? My point to all this, Story is the heart and soul of that lineup. And Rich, you said it. They're going to need him to have a big year. And I feel like he delivers. And I'll say this too. I don't feel like Colorado's just a bunch of duds. They've got some talent there that they can work with. I love the CJ Cron sign. Ryan McMahon. Charlie Blackmon's still there. It's just Charlie Blackmon's killing the ball. Colorado will be fine. They're not going to be great, but they're still going to hit. And Story's going to be right there in the middle of it. 12.2 ADP. This is the point to all this. Comparison's sake. It doesn't matter where you pick in the first round. You should be able to get one of these three guys. That's the point. Now, we know people are going to react. This is going to go up and down. That's why I like doing this. I'll track it as the year goes on, or as the preseason goes on, because that's telling as well, right? That tells you like who's becoming more popular, and then you start to think about why. It's just kind of like a fun little thing. Some players, if they move 1 or 2 spots, it's still important, but the guys that move 10, 15 spots, and it doesn't happen this high, right? It usually happens a little lower down. But, if Trevor Story moves up from a 12 to a 10, that means, hey, you don't want to sleep on him, right? But I love the value at 12.2 out of Trevor Story. I told you I'll talk about my list next week. But before I get into this guy, I want to take this into account, and I want to discuss this. Stolen bases is the thing here, right? We're talking about this from a stolen base perspective. All of these guys carry stolen bases, but none of these guys hurt you with average. That's the key. Even Story, his last 3 years. 27, 23. He had 15 stolen bases last year, guys. So, again, I'm big on projections. Third of the year, that's 45 stolen base projection. Now, I don't think he's going to do that. I'm not sitting here trying to pretend that. But when I say that and I think about that, that doesn't mean 40's out of the realm of possibility. 40's kind of the ceiling is the way I look at it. If he runs at this pace. No, I know things changed because Nolan's not there, right? So I want to talk about, and again, I'll go in depth next weekend with these guys, and we're gonna move over and we're gonna strategize second base next. But I want to talk about the one sleeper. The one guy in here, when you think about this time next year, who might be the guy that's up here with this group? The one guy to me that jumps out, well, there's two. But I want to talk about Tim Anderson. ADP of 47. 47. It's the end of the 4th round in a 12-team draft for Tim Anderson. This tells you how deep this position is. The 11th shortstop off the board, according to Fantasy Pros, at pick 47. Pause for effect. And these guys are good, but I mean, Xander Bogaerts, Mondesi, Bregman, Seager. I get it. I get it. But when you talk about pure skill set, Anderson to me seems to be undervalued here. 28 years old. He's put things together. He's given us a couple years back to back. Now, back to the OBP thing. He's not going to walk. He's not going to manufacture a run to save his backside. But if you're hitting at a 322 clip, that kind of negates some of that, doesn't it? So that's when you kind of have to be a little bit subjective when you're approaching this and take every case on its own individual merits, if you will. So the last 2 years, the last 2 full years, we saw a huge. So 2018, you saw Tim Anderson hit 240. 240. Sure, he hit 20 homers. He stole 26 bases. You're thinking, I can live with this. This guy's not bad. 25. The next year, 2019, he comes out. The last full season we have on record. He comes out and hits 335 as a 26-year-old. Get you 18 and 17. That changes things. Now, he's not scoring a lot of runs because his team isn't very good at that point. And like I said, he won't take a walk. For perspective, Tim Anderson has reached base on a walk 25 times in the last 2 years. So year and a third. That's it. 25 times. But when you're hitting 335, that kind of it makes up for some things. So, again, last year we go in, is this an anomaly? Is this just a, juice ball, or, he's exploiting a weakness, or, what have you? He backed it up last year. He had 322. And he kept the power. And he kept the speed, although maybe a little bit lost. But that's okay. Last year was a trying year. If Tim Anderson continues to hit at a 310, 320, 330 pace, he is a first-round pick this time next year. His profile. Now, the other part of this is, 81 runs is his career high. That comes from not working the walk, right? So, and his team's not being very good. So you have to think the maturity of the White Sox, the addition of some of the players that they've brought in, and this kid having another full year, that he increases and he pushes that 100 mark. I look for Anderson to have a big year. I love him, especially at 47. Shortstop is littered, though, with guys that I love. Gleyber Torres at 66.2 to me is criminal, much as Carlos Correa at 121. I think both of those guys have big bounce-back years. Correa's playing for a contract, And Gleiber's he's a special talent, and he's playing in a good ballpark. I love Bo Bichette at the top of this tier to take a big step forward. He's currently the 6th shortstop off the board at 26, so that's top of the 3rd round. I'd be happy if I got Bo Bichette at top of the 3rd round. He's another one of those guys that has 30-30 type power and can hit for over 300. The Blue Jays are something to watch out for this year. They got a lot of good young talent, and I think they're led by Bichette. And I love Vlad. I talked highly of Vlad last weekend, Rich. But make no mistake, this is Bichette's offense. Even with Springer there, this is Bichette's offense. So some prospects. There's some really cool and fun prospects to consider when you're drafting. These are important, not so much in a redraft type league where you let everybody go every year, but they could be, because 2 of these guys should see the majors this year, maybe all 3. But these are the most exciting shortstop prospects from my perspective. Wander Franco, one of the top prospects in baseball. Tampa Bay generally knows how to develop their players. This guy's been, compared to, this is a guy that at the Appalachian level, which is low rookie ball, had better numbers than Vladimir Guerrero. This guy's been everybody's darling, the number 1 prospect for years. And we're at a point now where even as a 20-year-old, he's on the verge of coming up. He's currently 19. He's getting ready to turn 20. From the Dominican Republic, we're talking about a guy here who's going to carry a high average. Maybe not knock your socks off with the home runs and the stolen bases. Probably more so with the stolen bases early. But a guy in his prime who's a 2020 type player, a guy in his prime who will compete for batting titles. Keep an eye on this guy. Again, if you are in a league where you can keep, say, 3 or 4 players, this is someone you might want to consider drafting late and hold on to. He's that type of talent. Again, dwarf Vladimir Guerrero's numbers and on the same age trajectory, which is telling. Okay? O'Neal Cruz, 22 years old. We're talking about a player has grown 3 inches in the last 2 years. He has a 70 rated arm on a 20 to 80 scale, which is well above average. He could push for everyday playing time right after the Super 2 deadline. You could see O'Neal Cruz in a Pirates uniform beside Brian Hayes as soon as June 3rd. The profile for Cruz is, again, with 6'7", he's got long arms and a big swing. He has prodigious power, and he's someone that's going largely unnoticed simply because he's probably not going to start the season at the major league level. People draft Super 2 players all the time. If you're in a league that doesn't take those type of players, you can still use this guy. You might want to spend a waiver wire on him late May because he is going to impact this Pirates offense this year. The Pirates want to see who they have, and this kid is part of their future. A lot of people probably aren't talking about O'Neal Cruz, but he could impact your team. The last rookie to consider at the shortstop position for this year, at least in shallower drafts, C.J. Abrams. Now, I know what you're going to say here. He's probably not. He's probably not ready for the big leagues. And I'll give you that. That's fair. There's this guy, Fernando Tatis, is playing in front of him at shortstop. Fair. The thing about Abrams is when you have the type of speed that he has, all it takes is one injury. And it doesn't have to be Tatis. Maybe Machado gets hurt. There was talk of Abrams coming up and playing as a center fielder because of his elite speed. Abrams can pinch hit off the bat right now for the Padres. He could come in off the bench and steal bases. He's automatically one of the fastest guys on the team. So and he's got a pretty good bat. I look for C.J. Abrams to be a factor. One, if there's an injury, or two, after the All-Star break, when the rosters expand. If you're needing cheap stolen bases and you got a dead roster spot after the break, you really want to consider Abrams. He can influence games. Chap's Fantasy Chat, 8:37. Thursday nights at 8. Draft for Upside is the site. Join me at 10 o'clock. We're going to do the other angle with Chappie and RC. OA, as we like to call it. Have fun. It's going to be we're going to talk a lot of college basketball tonight. There's a lot going on. So, make sure you join us. And we're going to talk some baseball. We're going to talk some, off-season football too. So it's a good time. Let's talk about second baseman. Second basemen are important. And it's important to put in perspective the scale's not balanced. Okay? What do I mean by that? When you look at second base, there are no first rounders at second base. There are no second rounders at second base. DJ LeMahieu is the first second baseman off the board at the top of the second round, 25.6. You still got stolen bases here, guys, and you got really good power. There's some guys here that are sleepers that you can take advantage of. So let's talk about stolen bases. Adalberto Mondesi, compared to, and I know Mondesi's, I know I'm going back over here. Compared to Story and Tatis and Turner, he's being drafted really highly, guys. But the possibility of his inability to get on base really, to me, raises a big red flag. And that's why you see him going at 33. So a third-round pick. When you look down through the second base position, there's not a whole lot there. So from a category leader perspective, Adalberto Mondesi scored 24 bases last year. Trevor Story, sorry, I'm in the wrong silo, guys. Jonathan VR stole 16 bases. And I tie it in. Mondesi stole 24, right? So a third less. But still enough to impact. enough to consider, especially when you're talking about at ADP 173. Comparatively speaking, that's a lot less draft capital. John Berte was his second baseman on the stolen base list. 9. Guys, this is a part-time player. The thing about Berte, he hit 258. So he's not killing you with average. He plays all over the field. Although I would suggest you play him at second base if you draft him. But he hit the same number of home runs as VR did. Now, I know it's a short season. I tell you guys all the time you can't count that like that. Sometimes you break the rules. My point here, and the ask is higher. What do we think about Kevin Biggio? When you're filling out your second base, now I know he's moving to third base this year, but when you're drafting your team right now, Biggio's a second baseman. So why not take advantage of that? 60 ADP? Yeah, his average might hurt you. Not hurt you, but not help you, right? 250, 260. But if you look at what he's capable of and what he's already shown at the big league level, I think you're happy with that. 16 and 14 as a rookie. 8 and 6 last year. Again, 24 and 18. He raised his batting average 16 points. That's a good sign. Guys, at 60, I feel like we could be talking about him next year at the top of this category. Albies at 33. Or Biggio at 60. I feel like, yes, Albies is going to carry a higher average. I feel like that might be the top. He might be the number 2 guy this time next year, and he might be a third-round pick. And it's a unique profile. You don't see a whole lot of guys in this category, especially at second base, that are going to hit homers and steal bases. So, just to wrap it up, to drive the point home, I feel like when you're approaching the middle infield position, it's vital, more so than any other position, outside of maybe pitcher. Pitcher's pretty important too. To have a plan and to execute that plan to a T. And that plan should be get stolen bases and home runs together with a high batting average. Out of at least one of those players, hopefully 2. I've given you guys a couple different options to go off of to be able to fill that out. I've given you the high-end guys, and I've given you some middle-tier guys. Next week, we're going to talk about our lists. And we're going to break down the actual valuation and where these guys fall in the pecking order for me. I urge you guys to make your own lists. Don't go into your leagues going off of someone else's valuation. Make your own. If you take a stolen base guy lower on in the draft, you're gonna have a big donut hole somewhere in your stat line. Approach that early with the Trevor Story, with the Trey Turner, with the Tatis, and then backfill it with another good player. Address this position early, guys. You can't get this sort of versatility at the corner infielder. You have to get it at short and second. Nobody at third or first is going to steal bases the way they do at this position. Capitalize on that early. Come back and join me. 10 o'clock, the other angle, Chappie and RC. You'll talk some football, some basketball, and yes, some baseball. Thursday nights at 8, Chap's Fantasy Chat. Thursday nights at 10, the other angle. Next week, like I said, we're going to talk about an actual list. Give you guys a parting gift. A few breakout candidates. Corey Seager, didn't talk about. 307, 15 homers, 38 RBIs, 41 ribs last year. His 2-year total, 34 homers, 128 RBIs, and 120 runs. Third round pick. I drove some people off because I wanted to share this with you. All right, guys. I'll see you guys at 10. Hope you guys enjoyed the content. Give me a follow. Chap's Fantasy Chat on Twitter. Chap's Fantasy Sports Group on Facebook. Draft for Upside. First and Goal. Lou Landers. Appreciate you guys. All right, y'all. See you in an hour. Take care.